Alright guys, how are you? Today I've decided to do a video on the thigh region and the upper arm. So I did receive a bit of comments concerning the last video that I made that I should include a bit of visuals and drawings, but I'll work on that as well. But for now we have to make do with what's there. So I've decided to link the region of the upper limb and the lower limb to make study a bit easy, and let's just get straight into it right now. So we'll start with the thigh region, then link it with the upper arm. So since the thigh has a lot of information, let's just dwell in it, then finish it, then get back to the upper arm, then we finish. Simple. So we'll start with the skin of the thigh region anteriorly, where we have the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh supplying the anterior aspects of this thigh region. Of course, the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh arises from the lumbar plexus. Remember, our lumbar plexus has branches that emerge from different margins of the psoas major muscle. Our psoas major muscle arising from the transverse processes, the bodies of the intervertebral discs of T12 up until L5, and then together with the iliacus muscle inserting into the lesser trochanter of the femur, which we'll cover. Of course, that's being the bone of the thigh region. Then the obturator nerve arises from the medial aspect. Then this will give innervation to the medial aspect as well of the thigh. Simple. Then from the anterior portions we have that genitofemoral nerve, which will supply the medial aspect as well, but then of importance that will be the femoral branch. The genital branch, of course, will supply that cremasteric muscle. Remember that cremasteric reflex when you stroke the medial aspect of the thigh, then you have a contraction, something like that. Then from the lateral aspect we have the iliohypogastric ilioinguinal, that's L1, lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh, L2 and L3. Then L2, L3, L4 give rise to that largest branch of the lumbar plexus, that's the femoral nerve. The femoral nerve will divide into an anterior and a posterior division. The anterior division has two cutaneous nerves, the posterior division is one, that's the saphenous nerve, which accompanies the great saphenous vein. But then right now we want to dwell on the two cutaneous divisions of the anterior portion, that's the medial and intermediate cutaneous nerves of the of the thigh. So these the names being self-explanatory will give sensory innervation to the medial and medial aspects of our thigh region. Then from the skin we move into superficial fascia, where we have membranous layer of superficial fascia extending from that of the abdominal layer of the abdominal wall. So this will only extend a finger breadth below the inguinal ligament, and then we'll have it ending abruptly. Of course, this clinically becomes important when we talk about extravasation of urine from rupture of the urethra or anything else. So remember that we say when we have rupture now, this urine won't percolate down the thigh, since we have a closed space. And then we also have that deep layer, that deep layer of fat as well being present. Then we have a deep fascia. This deep fascia will laterally extend and thicken to form that iliotibial tract that receives the greater insertion of the gluteus maximus muscle. Then we also have this gluteus maximus muscle inserting on the gluteal tubercle that is just below the gluteal trochanter. Then the iliotibial tract also receives that tensor fascia lata. Then within this deep fascia we find this that saphenous opening, where the great saphenous vein will go through to drain into the femoral vein. So remember, this great saphenous vein, as it enters this space, will receive three veins that corresponding in name to the three branches that arise from the femoral artery just after it crosses the inguinal ligament and change names. So remember, when it was through an external iliac artery, just before it crossed that inguinal ligament, we got the deep circumflex iliac veins and the inferior epigastric veins. The inferior epigastric arteries. This inferior epigastric artery goes up and anastomoses with the superior epigastric artery, which is together with the musculophrenic artery, the terminal branches of the internal thoracic artery. The internal thoracic artery arising from the first part of our subclavian artery, but that's for another day. Then so since we talked about a deep circumflex iliac artery, that means one of those branches of the femoral artery will be a superficial one. Then we have a superficial epigastric. Then we have a superficial external pudendal. pudendo, meaning the external genitalia. Pudendo is just an adjective for pudentum, so it becomes easy to know where these vessels will be going. Then what else can you talk about? So that's the deep fascia. Then we'll now get into the muscles of the anterior fascial compartment. But then before we talk about them and the attachments, it's important to know the femur as well, being that it's the bone of thigh region. So it has a head that is 2/3 of a sphere, in contrast to the humerus, of course. So in the middle portion of this head, we have that fovea capitis that receives the ligament of the head. The ligament of the head, of course, conveying blood supply to the head. That is a branch from the obturator artery. Then we have a neck. Then this neck is oriented at 125 degrees to the shaft of the humerus. But then this is for males. In females, this angle may be less, around 123 or even less. But then in children, we have the angle being 160 degrees and a bit larger, explaining why if you've had a kid or you have a younger sibling, you know how like when they first walk, like sort of, what can I say, the stance that they use and everything. If you haven't checked it out, you can actually check it out and see. I have, and I have correctly ticked my anatomy textbook to be correct. Then clinically we may have an increase or a decrease in this angle. Where we have an increase, we talk about coxa valga. Then where we have a decrease, we talk about coxa vara. If you're a Shona and you know the word vara in Shona, then it will be easy to say vara at the angle as. Then from the shaft, we have the anterior surface of our femur being rounded and smooth. Then the posterior surface is roughened, of course, whereas that linear aspera. Then we have the pectineal line is what that receives that pectineus muscle. And the pectineus muscle, of course, arising from that superior ramus of the pubis. The superior ramus, of course, goes to join the ilium and the ischium at the acetabulum that receives the head of the femur. Then the inferior ramus joins the ischial ramus just below the obturator foramen. Then that linear aspera, of course, distally would then diverge laterally and medially to form the supracondylar ridges, medial and lateral respectively. Then the medial one, of course, would then sort of become continuous with that adductor tubercle that then becomes continuous with the major epicondyles of our femur. So since I've talked about me linking the upper arm and the thigh, so if I say humerus instead of femur, you just bear in mind with me. So we now get straight into the anterior compartment of our thigh. So the muscles, we have the sartorius muscle coming from the anterior superior iliac spine, then goes to the upper end of the major surface of the tibia. So we have those three strap muscles: the sartorius, the gracilis, which we'll talk about when we talk about the major fascial compartment, then the semitendinosus, that is from the posterior compartment. These three are the three strap muscles that will attach at the same point as the upper major aspect of the tibia. Then from the I've talked about the sartorius. Then we have that pectineus, I've just talked about it, from that superior ramus to the pectineal line, of course, that's the linear aspera. Then the iliacus, I talked about it together with the psoas. They both insert on that lesser trochanter, because they form that iliopsoas ligament. That is tendon. That is a common tendon. Then we talk about the vasti, and these vasti, they arise from the shaft of the humerus, and together they will insert into the ligamentum. Together they'll actually insert on the patella, and then from this patella they will then insert on the ligamentum patella that will go to that tubercle on the tibia. Then these, they extend. The sartorius, actually, it flexes both the hip and the knee joint. Then what else? The nerve supply of the anterior fascial compartment, of course, is the femoral nerve. Then the arterial supply will arise from the femoral artery, which we'll talk about in a bit. Then the So this quadriceps femoris, it has 4 parts. I've only mentioned 3 parts. It also has the fourth part. The fourth part, that's the rectus femoris. This has a short head and a long head. The long head, now get this. Isn't I talked about the sartorius arising from the anterior superior iliac spine, from the inferior one with that long head. Then the short head comes from the 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 ilium, but then just above the acetabular fossa. Then the femoral artery, I've already given you 3 branches. It also gives that that profunda femoris artery 4 centimeters below the inguinal ligament, but that is on the lateral aspect. This profunda femoris artery, upon being given, gives rise to a medial and lateral circumflex artery. These two participate in the trochanteric and cruciate anastomosis. The trochanteric, of course, being at the level of the lesser trochanter. It gives communication between the femoral artery and the internal iliac, because when we talk about superior and inferior gluteal arteries from the internal iliac anastomosing with these. Then we also have the genicular artery that goes to the knee region. Then this profunda femoris, of course, becomes the true artery of the medial compartment, but then it will end as the 4th perforating artery. Then we have it also gives 3 perforating arteries. The first perforating artery also taking part in that anastomosis that I've just talked about. Then we talk about the triangles. We have the femoral triangle and the adductor canal. The adductor canal being more of an intermuscular septum. So let's make a triangle like this, right? So laterally we have the sartorius muscle. Then I have the adductor longus. Then I have the inguinal ligament being the superior boundary. Then lateral I have sartorius. Medially I have the adductor longus. So that's a femoral triangle. But then when they meet at the apex, the sartorius then becomes an anteromedial border of this adductor canal. Then the adductor longus together with the adductor magnus then form the posterior portion of the posterior boundary of the adductor canal. Then the vastus medialis then forms that lateral border. Then of importance, the nerve to that vastus medialis, you'll find it in this region. Then what else should I talk about? The anterior compartment. That's the anterior compartment of the thigh. Then we'll now talk about the medial compartment. So for the medial compartment, the most or rather the easiest muscle we have is the gracilis muscle, which is one of those strap muscles, goes to insert on that upper medial end of the tibia, and then it arises from the inferior ramus of the pubis. So most of these muscles arise from that. So we have the gracilis, adductor magnus, adductor longus, adductor brevis, and the obturator externus. And then the nerve supply is the obturator nerve. Then it also divides into an anterior and posterior division. So picture this: adductor longus, brevis, magnus. So the anterior division is between longus and brevis, so potentially it will supply both. Then the posterior part is between the brevis and the magnus, so it may supply both, right? Then the artery for this is the obturator artery. I also talked about the profunda femoris artery. Then the obturator artery will then make me remember that I have forgotten the femoral sheath and the femoral canal as well, from that anterior portion. So remember we have the inguinal nodes occupying that fascial septum that is more medial. Then the femoral vein, that is the intermediate septum. Then the lateral septum, we have that femoral artery. Then outside the septum I find that femoral nerve. Then the femoral canal, now we have that femoral ring just below the inguinal ligament, being having borders. So medially, or rather should I say laterally, you find that femoral vein that I've just talked about. Medially you find that lacunar ligament that connects the inguinal ligament to the petunia ligament, also known as the Gimbenet's ligament. So in this ligament we may find an aberrant obturator artery. This obturator artery that I've just talked about being the artery of the medial compartment. So when we want to release pressure from femoral hernia, of course we have to sort of it's the only part that we can cut, so we may cut the blood supply to the medial compartment of the thigh. Then Posteriorly, we have the superior ramus. Then the superior ramus, of course, we talked about it having the pectineal line, then the pectineal ligament being an osseous thickening. Then superiorly, we have the inguinal ligament. Then to separate it, or rather distinguish it from an inguinal hernia, we actually find it below and lateral to the pubic tubercle. So that's basically the medial compartment. Then the posterior compartment, let's start with the skin. The skin now, the posterior cutaneous nerve of the thigh, that is a branch of the sacral plexus. Then going further up, we get to the gluteal region. We divide it into four quadrants. So picture it like this, being so this is sort of let's say left. So it's the left one. So this is more medial, right? So that the upper medial quadrant is the one that is posterior rami supplying it of the upper three lumbar and sacral nerves. Then the lateral one gets from the iliohypogastric, then as well as the subcostal nerve. Then the one that is below that. So those the two upper ones. Then we have the lower quadrants now. The one that is the other one gets from the lower cutaneous nerve of the thigh. So the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh, I mean. Then this one gets from the posterior cutaneous nerve of the thigh. So lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh. This is lateral. So easy. Then the one that is more medial, we then get it from the posterior cutaneous nerve of the thigh. Then from the skin, we now talk about the muscles now. So for the muscles of the posterior compartment of the thigh, I have the biceps femoris, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and the adductor magnus. The adductor magnus has both an adductor part and the hamstring part. So we now considering the hamstring part, that is the one of the posterior aspect. So they have a common origin, the ischial tuberosity. But then the biceps femoris has two heads. The long head is the one that comes from the ischial tuberosity. The short head comes from the linea aspera. So all they have the same innervation, the sciatic nerve. More specifically, it will be the tibial portion. Remember, it divides into a tibial and a common peroneal. But then the short head of the biceps femoris gives rise to that. The short head of the biceps femoris will get innervation from the common peroneal portion. Then we have those perforating arteries being the blood supply. Then that's the back. Then just the glutei, but then the glutei, they're not part of the thigh, they're part of the gluteus, the gluteal region. So the gluteus maximus receives its innervation from the inferior gluteal nerve. Then the superior gluteal nerve gives the medius and the minimus, as well as that tensor fascia lata, though it is the same insertion as that gluteus maximus and the same action whatsoever. But then that's just about it. So now we'll go a bit further up the body, and we talk about the upper arm. So for the upper arm, the sensory innervation, we have, let me try to use a bit of visuals, but I'm using my arm. So we have the supraclavicular nerves, which are C3 and C4 in origin. They arise from that Ebbs point. Remember, okay, for it to be easy, remember we talk about the Ebbs powers from the upper portions of the brachial plexus. C3, C4, they actually a bit higher up of the brachial plexus. So we have emergence of this C3 and C4 origin nerve, that's the supraclavicular nerves from that Ebbs point, and supplies the upper part. Then the medial part, of course, receives from the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm, as well as the intercostal brachial nerve. Medial cutaneous nerve of the arm being T1 in origin, intercostal brachial nerve being T2 in origin, thereby having referral of cardiac pain to the medial aspect of the arm. Then from the lateral aspect, just below that, that is the lower half of the deltoid, receives from that division of the upper lateral cutaneous nerve of the arm, that is from the axillary nerve, giving that axillary page association area. Then the lower one will be a branch of the radial nerve. Then we have the posterior cutaneous nerve of the arm as well, arising from the radial nerve. Then the muscles, I have the biceps, the biceps femur, the biceps brachii. Well, I'm coming from lower limb, to forgive me. The biceps brachii has a a long head coming from that supraclinoid tubercle. So remember that the one for the triceps now, that is the posterior compartment of the arm, comes from the infraclinoid tubercle. Then the short head comes from the coracoid process of our scapula. Then we have the coracobrachialis muscle as well, coming from what? The coracoid process goes to the shaft of the humerus, but then more to the medial aspect. This insertion of the coracobrachialis muscle becomes important when you talk of the ulnar nerve. At this point is where it leaves the anterior aspect and then pierces that posterior fascial septum to come together with the superior ulnar collateral artery. Then they'll end up on the posterior aspect of the arm. Then this coracobrachialis muscle is pierced by the musculocutaneous nerve. This musculocutaneous nerve will then lie between the brachialis and the biceps brachii. Then another content, we have the median nerve, gives no branches in this upper arm except for a few vasomotor branches. Then the radial nerve will also we also find it in this anterior compartment of the arm, but then more towards the lateral epicondyle. Then we have what was the brachial artery. Well, mostly cutaneous, cutaneous for most of its course. Then initially it has the median nerve to its lateral. Remember when the median nerve was being formed when we talk of the brachial plexus, the medial cord crosses, then joins the lateral cord, then they move laterally, then they cross, then lie medial to the brachial artery. This brachial artery came from the axillary artery at the lower body of teres major, then ends in the cubital fossa, which I'll talk about in a moment, to become the radial artery and the larger ulnar artery. Then it gives the profunda brachial artery, which is the artery of the posterior compartment, as well as superior ulnar collateral and inferior ulnar collateral arteries. These arteries will take part in the anastomosis around the elbow joint. And then let's just talk of the posterior compartment before we talk about the cubital fossa. The posterior compartment has the triceps muscle being the major muscle of the chief extensor, of course. The biceps brachii is the chief supinator. It's the weak flexor here. It's a strong flexor here. Then the brachialis also receives innervation from the radial nerve, together with the extensor carpi radialis longus and the brachioradialis, which are the muscles of the lateral compartment of the forearm, which we'll cover in a moment. Not in this video, but in the videos to follow. Sorry. Then the triceps is that long head that came from the infraclinoid tubercle. Then it is a lateral head that comes from the upper surface of the humerus. Then the short head comes from the lower surface, so the major head. But then get this, the lateral head came from the upper surface, but then in terms of innervation in the axilla, now the radial nerve will give rise to the branch to the long head and the medial head. Then in the arm region, it will then give a branch to the lateral head and then the major head as well as the anconeus. Then we have that radial nerve. Then the ulnar nerve, we find it midway half down the arm. Then we image on the major epicondyle, where we can actually roll it against the bone. Then this muscle will then insert on the olecranon process. The brachioradialis, which I had neglected from the anterior compartment, would then go to the coronate process. Then we have the cubital fossa, having a flow formed laterally by the supinator muscle, and then the brachioradialis muscle medially. Then superficial, we have the skin and superficial fascia. Then we talk about the borders, the pronator teres being the one that is on the medial surface. Then the contents, of course, we have the median nerve, the brachial artery. Then we have the tendon of the biceps brachii. Then we have that radial nerve as well. Then this brachial artery is separated from the overlying median cubital vein, which is important so that we don't introduce noxious substances or medication into the wrong vessels. So that's basically the upper arm, which I said it's a bit short. Then diving back to the region of the lower limb, the arm, I just want to talk about that femoral artery. So remember we talked about the femoral triangle. So this femoral triangle had that sartorius muscle forming the lateral border. So we have the iliacus and the psoas, and that adductor longus, they will form the floor. So when you talk about the relations of the femoral artery, the postural relations, that's floor of the femoral triangle, they're the relations. Then the femoral vein, of course, I did say it's medial, but then it starts lateral. When it changed name from the popliteal vein, it then becomes the femoral vein. It's lateral, then crosses posteriorly, then comes to lie medial in the upper part of the thigh. Then more lateral, of course, we have that femoral nerve that is lying outside the femoral sheath. Then, well, yeah, that's just about it. Thank you.